All right, everybody, welcome back to the channel. It is Friday, October 24th, year of our Lord, 2025, and today we are going to read. That's right, we're going to read. You've heard of a Let's Play? Well, this is a Let's Read. We're going to read an article from the First Things Media platform. They've got magazine articles, they've got podcasts, they've got newsletter, they've got events. And this article is written by none other than Professor of Biblical and Religious Studies at Grove City College, Carl R. Trueman. And it's called Goodbye, Big Eva. Hello, Gig Eva. Let's begin. All right. Let's do this. And, I got to be honest with you. I read this article, and I knew I had to do a video about it because I liked the article. That's right, I liked the article. But, as you might imagine, I've got some additional thoughts. And so, unlike what I normally do, where I just kind of have an idea of what I want to talk about, and I talk, I've actually got some notes this time that I wanted to make sure to get to certain things, as I read this article. Now, let me just get my thing here set up. Yeah. And so I've got some notes over here, and I've got the article right here. I've got one of those two screen setups here. I was thinking about getting a third screen too. I don't know. I mean, I might, like a stock trader or something like that. I need a third screen right over here. But let's do this. Oh, let me just take a sip of my coffee here. Oh, yeah. Very good. I like that. All right, here's the article. It's Carl Trueman. Goodbye, Big Eva. Hello, Gig Eva. It begins. He says, many years ago, I coined the term Big Eva. I'm not going to do the voice the entire time. Many years ago, I coined the term Big Eva. While today the term is used as a quick and lazy smear for any well-known figures of a previous generation that a particular X-man happens to dislike, at the time, I intended it to be a humorous but pointed reference to a specific phenomenon: the rise of big conference platforms and the promotion of certain speakers, which I called celebrity pastors, that supplanted or subverted the role of local congregations, ministers, and denominations in shaping church policy. By celebrity pastors, I did not mean those church leaders who happen to be well known. I meant those who consciously leverage their public platforms to exert influence beyond their church, thereby weakening it. These were not simply podcasters or bloggers or op-ed writers. They were key players in large parachurch organizations that sought to operate as denominations, but without the typical accountability that denominations are, in theory at least, supposed to involve. At the height of Big Eva's influence, I once asked a class of students who was the most influential pastor in their lives. Almost none mentioned his or her actual minister, defaulting instead to naming the headline acts at the big evangelical conferences, QED. QED. I don't know what that means. You know what I mean? I got to be honest with you. I don't know what that means, so I'm going to take it as a sign of disrespect. Back to the article. The era of Big Eva seems to have run its course. The conservative Protestant scene in the U.S. is no longer dominated by a few big-name celebrities or by a handful of large conferences. While those large conferences still exist and are often well-attended, they do not grip the popular evangelical imagination as they once did. They seem, on the whole, to have settled into the role that they should have always held: optional supplements to local church life for Christians who are committed to their own congregations but enjoy connecting to others from elsewhere and hearing preachers from a variety of denominations. But the problems at the heart of Big Eva have not disappeared. They have migrated into new forums, particularly that of social media. The broader business dynamics in the U.S. are now sometimes referred to as creating the gig economy, a term that describes the shift from traditional business model and institutions as sources of income to the more disparate and informal network of opportunities offered by new media. Ubers have squeezed licensed taxi drivers. Airbnb has opened up the world of short-term accommodation well beyond that once offered by professional hoteliers and proprietaires of guest houses. And so in the world of evangelicalism, Big Eva is being challenged by what we might call Gig Eva. There are some obvious differences between the big and the gig. Even in the world of Big Eva, the headline acts were generally men and women who had first established their reputations through service of local churches or talented writing for established publishers. They had a certain authority that predated their rise to Big Eva influence. In Gig Eva, anyone with the time to spend living online can become a celebrity without having proved himself beforehand in any real service to any church. But there are also similarities, such as the matter of accountability. Big Eva gurus were accountable only to each other. Their heirs in Gig Eva are accountable to nobody. To put it another way, both tend to marginalize the actual church by making their own platforms and declarations the source of all wisdom. But Gig Eva has only intensified the problem that led me to coin the term Big Eva. There is a further similarity. Both are shaped by the economy of their chosen media. In the world of big venue conferences, headline names are critical to sell tickets. That led Big Eva at times to be undiscerning about who was welcome on stage. I remember asking one Big Eva boss if he thought a couple of his headline acts were men who offered godly models of what a pastor should be. He said no, then did nothing. Both men imploded in public scandal sometime later, and only then did they exit the conference stage. The economies of social media are different. And this is reflected in the culture of Gig Eva. Building a platform on X, for example, involves constant transgression of boundaries. Hence, the emergence of Gig Eva personalities whose trademark behavior ranges from attacking the leaders of Big Eva to rehabilitating Hitler. And Gig Eva has the advantage of the frictionless nature of technologically mediated engagement. Big Eva silenced critics by ignoring them or making quiet phone calls to employers. Gig Eva launches full frontal personal attacks, but does so from the relative safety offered by tech platforms that have no place for that pesky prerequisite of personal competence. Indeed, X is proving to be the perfect platform for those aspiring to be the modern successors to Middlemarch's Will Ladislaw, who was not at all deep himself in German writers, but very little achievement is required in order to pity another man's shortcomings. No individual group or writer in Gig Eva will likely enjoy the breadth of influence experienced by their Big Eva forefathers. The diffuse nature of online discourse means that there will never be a focal point of the kind provided by the conference stage in the 10,000-seat convention hall. But Gig Eva may well reshape significant paths of the Christian culture because it is so attuned to the pieties of the dominant expressive individualism of our day. Its advocates validate their personal authenticity by their constant iconoclasm, their decrying of anything that stands in their way, and the priority of disembodied, cost-free, and online engagement over the more expensive demands of service and accountability to real people in real time in church and in homes. Big Eva had its problems. Gig Eva is set only to intensify them. Sounds like Carl Trueman's not kidding. I mean, it really does. I got to be honest with you. It sounds like he's not kidding. And I got to say, I like this article. I do. I think he's onto something here, right? It's true. Some of the things he's saying are true. But as I said before, you might imagine I've got some thoughts. And I'm going to share those thoughts with you today. Now, the first thing I wanted to emphasize about this is it really kind of strikes me that this piece is a nostalgic piece, right? It's written as though there was once this era, and, you know, it had its imperfections, it had its warts, but, you know, it was really better. You know, the previous days were better than these. You know what I mean? And influence was, you know, the way that it was used and the way it flowed, you know, it was the right way. It was responsible, right? But I got to be honest with you, though he does kind of say, well, there was some problems and stuff like that. I really think he's being very selective about how he remembers the previous times, right? Because I got to be honest with you, like what it really strikes me as is that Carl Trueman and his buddies, they've kind of lost control. They've lost control of the narrative. Their gatekeeping doesn't work the way it used to work. And this article strikes me as a lament that the gatekeeping doesn't really work the way it used to work. You know what I mean? You used to have to be in the guild in order to get on the conference stage. And yeah, there was some mistakes made, right? I mean, accountability and all this stuff. But, you know, in general, I mean, it was good. You had to prove yourself, right? You had to get a book published, you know, in a normal publishing house, like a approved, you had to publish a Crossway or something like that. And, you know, if you were going to speak to people, I mean, you had to speak to the audience with 10,000s of people. And so that kind of proved a certain level of, you're legit, right? You're legit. And that was good. That was good. This is a very nostalgic piece. He even when he talks about how he coined the term Big Eva, which I didn't know that he did that. He coined the term Big Eva. It was a critique, but it was also like a humorous, sort of lighthearted critique, right? Like it was a, yeah, big knucklehead, like that kind of a critique, right? And I gotta say, the nostalgia is dripping deep in this article. He is lamenting to the days of yore, the way it used to be. And so I gotta be honest, like, I think that sort of, at the outset, when you first read this article, you kind of have to know the mindset. This is an article of lament, and it's not the way it used to be. And he was more influential the way it used to be. In fact, the whole idea of this social media, gig economy, and he's saying how it's dangerous and it's going to be bad and all this kind of stuff. Really, what's happened, and I think you really do need to understand it this way, is that his influence has been diluted over the years. You know what I mean? His influence has been diluted over the years. And that's a lamentable thing for any man, for any person, for their influence to be diluted. And you see these kids out there, and their influence is rising. And sure, it's not as much as yours is, but you can easily see the flow of influence, and it's going away from you, even though it's still big for you, and going to them, and that is not a comfortable feeling. And that's why this article is written like a lament, a nostalgic lament. And so everything that you read in this article, I think personally you frame it from that perspective, because that is what he's offering you. Now, the other thing here that I wanted to talk about is that this really, in addition to the lament and the nostalgia, there's certainly an elitism here that's at play. It's subtle. I think it's an elitism, because at the core of his argument here is, the problem here is mostly who's saying the things. Who's saying the things? And sure, what they're saying is a problem. He throws the requisite, they're Nazis in the article, right? I mean, you got to do that. If you're going to write an article like this, you got to do that. Oh, yeah, they love Hitler. You know what I mean? You got to do that. So, yeah, there's problems with what they're saying. But really, the fundamental core problem here is who's saying it. These guys didn't even go to seminary. I mean, have they even written a book? And then he throws something else in there that I found so interesting. Honestly, I did. The Crossway, like the publishing house thing, yeah, they've never written a book, never been to seminary, that kind of thing. That's pretty typical. But then he throws something else in there. They haven't even served in a local church. They've never proven themselves, right? Because the idea here that he's trying to get you to buy is that the person you see on the video, someone like me, they've never proven themselves to be faithful in any capacity, right? The question I ask, how would he know that? How would he know that? Because a lot of these guys that I have a feeling he has in mind, now if you notice, he doesn't name anybody, and that is a common tactic for someone like Carl Trueman. He does not have the stones to actually name names, so you can check his work, right? You can't check his work, because though he's putting people's names into your mind, he's not actually saying them. And that is a very sophisticated wizard tactic that all of these people use. Like he knows who you're thinking of. That's the thing. He knows who you're thinking of when he's writing these words, but he's not writing it. So he can't be held accountable for it. This is the thing. A lot of these Big Eva guys, and of course Carl Trueman is in Big Eva, right? A lot of these Big Eva guys think that they can fool God. Because it's like, I'm not slandering if I don't say a person's name, but you know exactly who you're writing. I've noticed this for years. From the very beginning of my YouTube content, you get a guy, Tim Keller will, sometimes they slip up and they get a little too precise, right? And you're like, hey, Tim, I know you didn't say so-and-so, but this obviously describes so-and-so. Why are you lying about him? And he'll be like, well, I didn't say that. I didn't say that. They think they can fool God. They're lying about someone without naming them, so they can't be held to account for it by people. But it's as if God can't hold them to account for it. It's unbelievable. But anyway, so you know who he's thinking. A lot of these guys, they do serve in local churches. Not only do they serve in local churches, but they serve a lot in local churches. Now, a guy like me, I'm not trying to justify myself here, right? But over the years, I've served in local churches, in local contexts, in many different ways, right? And right now, it's a little different. I don't really serve in a local church right now because I go to a kind of a standard evangelical community church, and I'm a Presbyterian by confession. So, of course, they're not going to have me teach anything, right? And it's obvious, right? It's obvious. So I haven't even tried. I haven't even tried because I understand where they stand. They know where I stand, and everything's all good. But in the past, of course I have. I've served in local churches. I've taught in Sunday schools. I've preached numerous times. I used to be a pastor, so I preached all, half the sermons on all this kind of stuff. And the thing is, but Carl Trueman doesn't know that. So as far as he's concerned, you don't have an approved resume. If you don't have an approved resume, you don't have any resume. That's in Carl Trueman's elite mind, right? Because you haven't been approved by the guild, and therefore your church service doesn't actually count. It's of no account because, is it even real if it's not approved in the guild? There is a subtle elitism here. And Carl Trueman does not like the fact that he had to work very hard to get his guild membership. He got the guild membership, and now he's looking around, and his influence has been diluted. He was promised a good job after college, and now he can't get one. And that's very frustrating. That's very frustrating. I can imagine that being very upsetting. So there's an elitism here as well. The other thing here is I think that... And again, I can't criticize him for not writing about every topic, of course. And that's why I kind of like the article, right? I do kind of like this article. It sounds like I don't like it, but I do like it because I think it's true to a certain degree. The other thing is, I think the gig economy or the gig Eva thing is kind of real, right? It is kind of real. In fact, I've talked about it. In fact, I've celebrated it. I like it. You know what I mean? Obviously. And not just because I'm a member of Gig Eva, card carrying, but also because I think that there is a very good reason why Gig Eva has emerged, right? There's a good reason for it. And this is the thing, a lot of times these guys don't want to take accountability for the problems that they themselves caused, right? There's never an opportunity. This is the thing about a lot of these guys. There's never an opportunity to take a good look in the mirror. I've said that so many times on my channel. It's time for you to take a good look in the mirror because I don't exist if you were doing your job. This is the problem. Because this is the thing. Big Eva, as a unit, obviously you can find exceptions, but as a unit have been colossal failures in major ways in recent history, right? We saw Big Eva, and they all had the Black Lives Matter black square on their profiles. We saw Big Eva absolutely failing to understand the absolute threat of the feminist movement in Christian circles, in evangelicalism, the promotion of women as these epic teachers of God, and they can be deacons and shepherdesses, and all this kind of stuff. And Carl Trueman is absolutely guilty of this, right? Because the thing is, Gig Eva doesn't rise if Carl Trueman said anything about Amy Bird, right? Who he helped create. Carl Trueman helped create Amy Bird. And when she went off the deep end, he said nothing. No accountability. No recognition that, you know what, those Gig Eva goons that I don't like, they were kind of right. They were kind of right. And not only that, but he also lent credence to the witch hunt amongst those Gig Eva guys that were all right about Amy Bird. They were all right. But no, they had to be punished because they're Gig Eva and we're Big Eva. And so this is the thing, like, you got to understand, like these major issues. And the thing is, you could probably stop Gig Eva to a certain degree if you were to just do a couple things, right? And just say, I was wrong. Man, I was wrong. That whole time with the George Floyd thing, I got fooled. I was fooled. And I've spent years thinking about it. And, the whole COVID thing with shutting down churches and all this stuff. Like, I was so wrong, man. I got fooled. And I was wrong. And all those things I said at the time when I put the Black Lives Matter thing and all the pious, holier-than-thou stuff. I cannot abide another black killing in our country. All that stuff. Like, I was wrong about it, and here's how I'm going to fix my mindset, because I don't want to be fooled like that again, right? Here's what I'm going to do. Here's how I'm going to process these things from now on. I'm going to, but there's none of that. There's none of that. So Gig Eva was right in major ways that you were wrong, and there was no acknowledgement of it. There's a pretense of, I've always believed the right thing, and we all know that's not true. That's why Gig Eva exists. I don't exist if I saw people that were from Big Eva that were saying, I don't really know about Trump either, but it's not racist to support Trump. It's not racist to support deportations. Like, that's just a function of the government. I mean, this makes perfect sense. No, I didn't see any of that, right? I didn't see any of that. Instead, we got, you're a naughty boy for, all that kind of stuff. I don't exist if that stuff was going on. But the thing is, none of it was going on, right? And so I'd put out my little content. I'm like, I'm not so sure about what Russell Moore said here. Yeah, I like Matt Chandler, but I'm not so sure about this thing about white privilege. Like, I don't really get it, and all this stuff. And then, of course, we know the story. I mean, the whole weight of Big Eva falls on top of me. And I realize, this is just a scam. This is just another one of those scams. So I'm not going to criticize him for not, writing about why Gig Eva has, risen in the midst of Big Eva falling. You write about what you want to write about, but to pretend like there's not a good reason for it, right? Is don't do that. Don't do that. Don't read this article and miss that, because there's a reason why this has happened, right? It's not like, I've always said this, it's not like I got out of bed one day and said, you know what? I want a platform. And, the way I'm going to do it, the way I'm going to do it is I'm going to start ripping Russell Moore. I just don't, I'm just going to do it. Well, Matt Chandler, I got so much value from him, but screw it. I'm going to build a platform. So I'm going to start hating on his stuff. It's not how it happened. That's not how it happened. What happened was there was like an existential problem. And I was like, man, I love Matt Chandler. I mean, I love Russell Moore. I love Tim Keller. But some of this stuff they're saying is wild. This is not true. I know this is not true. That's how it happened. For most of us, that's how it happened. Oh, man. The other thing here, too, is that the idea that he's presenting as well is that this whole rise of Gig Eva is negative. It's definitely presented as a negative thing, right? This is going to decay and exacerbate problems and stuff like that. Why? Why? He doesn't really say. I mean, he says there's no accountability, but again, how do you know that? How do you know that? Here's a secret that you might not know about me. My pastors aren't really down with my content too much. They allow me to do it, but they have issues sometimes with the things I say and how I say them, right? And all of that. And I think, at the end of the day, they do hold me accountable for the things that I say. And they're on top of it. But also my pastors understand that, when you have a flock, the flock's going to do what the flock's going to do, right? You want your flock thinking. You want your flock, debating with each other and kicking around ideas. Like, you don't want a flock that's just saying, well, I'm hearing, what my pastor says, and I just believe literally everything my pastor says, right? Obviously, you want them to believe you, right? But at the end of the day, you understand that you are not in control of every area of their life. You understand that. Like, obviously, there's times to step in, but you know what? I rule my family and run my family the way I want to because I'm accountable to God for that, and they aren't. They aren't. They're not accountable to God for the way that I discipline my children, the way that I teach my children. Now, of course, there's exceptions, right? I mean, there's places they can step in. We all understand that. But those places are few and far between. You understand? Like I'm in control. I'm in charge of my house. I'm accountable to God for the way I rule my house. And my pastors are in charge of me, and they're accountable to God for the way they rule me. But there's a lot of areas where they actually they're not in charge of my vote, right? They're not, right? They're not in charge of a lot of my political action. Of course, there's exceptions. But this decentralization, this is not an automatic bad thing, right? The guild is not automatically good or preferential to the gig. It isn't. And there's obviously times when the gig economy, it's actually promoting more good than the guild. We've been in that period for a long time. And so this whole idea of decentralization, he wants to present it as very scary and very, very worrisome and concerning and all this kind of stuff. But why? It's concerning to you because you're in the guild. See, that's the thing. Like, yeah, it's concerning because your paycheck kind of relies on you maintaining a certain amount of influence. So I understand why you're worried about it, but why should everybody else be worried about it? Why should everybody else be worried about it? I don't know. He doesn't say. He doesn't say. Now, here's the other thing, too. Many others have noticed this. I can't say I can't take credit for this one, but on Twitter, I saw William Wolf notice this. I saw, I believe, who else was it? Was it Chase? I think it was Chase. First Things magazine. I saw so many people sharing this, and first of all, it's written by First Things magazine, which is a media platform. It's a platform, right? It's a platform. I saw people sharing it on Twitter, which is a social media platform, right? This article and these shares, it's cultural commentary. It's meant for a mass audience outside of your local congregation, It's monetized. It's monetized for attention and money and clicks. In other words, it's a gig. He's writing a gig article against the gig economy. This is a gig. This is Carl Trueman's gig. You gotta be kidding me. So let me get this straight. This is the truth. This is the truth of every critique of social media ever. They're always made on social media, right? So it's like, yeah, social media is bad because anyone can put their opinion out there, and they don't need to prove anything, and it's written on social media. You're doing it. You're participating in the gig economy right now. You're doing it. What it is almost like they don't own mirrors in their house. It's like they don't own mirrors in their house. When somebody critiques me and they do a video about me, like this has happened a number of times, and I'm not like a top popular topic of conversation. Like I'm not a Joel Webbin, right? People aren't trying to take me down every minute, but it does happen. And in the beginning, when that first started happening, like I didn't like it, and I'd get a little feeling of anxiety about it, but then I took a good look in the mirror. I took a look in the mirror and I said, at the end of the day, he's doing what I'm doing. He just thinks that I'm the bad guy. You know what I mean? So that's what it is. I mean, if I'm going to continue to do this, I've got to be okay with people doing this against me. And I took a look in the mirror. It's like these guys don't own mirrors. It's like nobody has got in their ear and said, you're ripping social media, but like, you're doing it on social media. I mean, at the end of the day, like, this is the thing. Like, basically what this article is saying is, he wants you to whenever you see someone online, social media, YouTube, whatever, it's basically the main point is, well, who's that guy? Who's that guy to you? Right? Your pastor should be your biggest influence on your theology. I mean, who's that guy? That's what he's saying. But at the end of the day, Carl Trueman is nothing to me. I like a lot of what Carl Trueman says, and I've gotten value from what Carl Trueman says, but at the end of the day, I don't have a relationship with Carl Trueman. He's nothing to me. Just like I'm nothing to you. Unless you know me. Some people who watch me, some of you guys know me. Some of you guys know me. It's as simple as that. And honestly, one of the things I love about social media is that, people like to say, well, it's not real. You don't meet people in social. It's not true, man. I've met so many people that I first met on social media, and I've made connections with people, and I've also connected other people. Someone reached out to me just the other day and said, hey, thank you so much for sharing about your friends, your real-life friends' barbershop in Detroit, or not Detroit, in Michigan, because I went there with my sons, and, like, I don't know, we're like best friends now. You know what I mean? Like, we're best friends. This guy's cool. And I'm like, yeah, Jed's awesome. By the way, if you're in Michigan, Jed, I don't know if it's called Jed's Barbershop. It used to be called Jed's Barbershop here in New Hampshire. But solid dude, man. Solid dude. His father is one of my pastors. His father is one of my pastors. Simple as that. Good guy. But so anyway, that's one of the things I like about social media. But the thing is, like, it boggles. Like, I'm not as surprised as I used to be about it, where people are just it's so ironic that they're lamenting these things that they're participating in, right? Like, if you're really against the gig economy, then quit. What it reads like to me is you're basically saying, look, I'm losing here in the gig economy, so you gotta quit. I'm gonna keep doing it, though. I'm gonna keep doing it. But you gotta quit because I don't like losing. You're not losing, by the way. You're more influential than us. But I think you can read the tea leaves. I think that you're smart enough to see the future, and eventually you will lose. Because the problem is either, and this is not the case for Carl, because I think Carl's ideas for the most part are good. Not all of them, but for the most part they're good. But I think that a lot of the Big Eva people lack, and the reason why they will lose, is because they lack courage. They lack cojones. You know what cojones means? I know what cojones means. They lack the unction that so many of us don't, right? And I think that is, you can read the tea leaves, you can see the future, you can see the trajectories, you can read the trends. And so these kinds of articles are sort of like a last-ditch, desperate effort to stop the bleeding. But there's only one way to stop the bleeding, and that is you have to kind of change your rules of engagement a little bit, I think. You need to name names in an article like this. Like, if you're thinking of Joel Webbin, write his name down so that everyone can check your facts, so that everyone can know, and you're now accountable to saying that Joel Webbin is this dangerous guy. Some people do that, and that's fine. You should do that. I always did that. And the reason I did that is because I respected my audience. And the facts are, Carl, you don't respect your audience, dude. You just don't. And I do. And so what I wanted to do is say, Russell Moore said this, and this is why Russell Moore is wrong. And that way, and people do this, they say, you're wrong about Russell Moore. You're wrong, because I checked what you wrote, what you said there, but then he also said this or that, and they can argue with me, and they can decide for themselves whether or not I'm right about Russell Moore, right? I respect my audience enough to let them disagree with me, and so I want them to fact check what I'm saying. I want them to fact check when I talk about Tim Keller what I'm saying, because I respect them enough to be able to disagree with me. You simply do not. You write an article like this, it's just a grenade that you just lob in a certain direction, But nobody can hold you accountable for it because you didn't name anybody. And all your buddies who are sharing your stupid article aren't naming anybody. And it's a strategy that they've used, and they learned it from guys like Tim Keller, who could never be held to account for anything that he said about anybody else because he didn't name them, even though he did. Even though he did. It's absolutely unbelievable. Unbelievable. But this is just, it's just, this is the thing. Like, it's the irony here is just perfection. It's perfection. You know what I mean? Like, you're in the economy that you're criticizing, and you expect nobody to recognize that. You know what I mean? Like, you don't see the major problem with that. You don't see how it compromises your entire argument. You're in the economy, right? And you're trying to create this situation where, well, you got to set up the rules of the economy in such a way that you're viewed in suspicion, but I'm not. I'm approved. I'm the washed. And there's nothing that these guys hate more than the fact that unwashed people have opinions about things. Unwashed people. And the thing is, if you're a theologian, I understand if somebody comes out and is talking about high theology and they're all wrong about it, and you people are listening to them and you get upset because they don't even have any training in theology and stuff like that. But you see, a lot of us aren't even talking about theology. That's the other thing. My channel is not a theology channel, although obviously my theology drives my opinions on so many things, right? I've got my theology first, and then I draw opinions on other things, flowing from my theology. But my channel's not a theology channel. We're talking about other things. We're talking about areas where, you don't have the training, right? I've got my opinion and you've got your opinion. You just don't like my opinion, so you want to pretend like it's somehow unapproved, somehow dangerous. And that would have worked 10, 15, 20 years ago. Doesn't work anymore. And that's a good thing. I know that you're longing for the good old days, but the good old days have passed because we've seen too much now, Carl. We've seen too much. We know too much. We all lived through 2020. You know what I mean? The summer of love. We all lived through COVID, and we all saw the things that you were doing, the things that you were saying, and we all see that you guys really don't have the instincts for this time. I'll still learn theology from you, Carl. I will. I'll still learn theology from you because that's important too. But when it comes to political action, posturing, engaging with the media, engaging with the enemy right now, you just don't have it. Maybe one day you'll get it, but you don't have it now. There's been colossal shifts, There's been colossal shifts. We used to be in a time where Christians were kind of looked at as neutral or good. We all talked about this, Aaron Wren's negative world, right? We're in negative world now, and quite frankly, you just don't seem like you have the facilities for negative world. The faculties. Faculties? Man, I can't think of it right now. And so we're going to continue to do what we're going to do. It's as simple as that. It's just as simple as that. I hope you found this helpful, Carl. I know that my opinion means nothing to you because I didn't even go to seminary. But tough luck. That's how it is. Hope you found it helpful. God bless.